Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to discuss the latest group calling for action against former Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries months after she said she'd resign with immediate effect, and well over a year, since she's done any actual work as an MP. And the argument this time is that her actions are damaging Parliament's reputation. Fair enough. But it does raise the question of why don't we get this fuss for other MPs who don't do their jobs? But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So Nadine Dorries is still playing her little games. It is still possible that she will formally resign as an MP just before Parliament goes into recess for the conference season towards the end of September. That way she will maximise the impact. She'll get the news headlines on herself just before her book comes out. And of course, just before Rishi Sunak has to face Conservative Party members at the conference. In the past few weeks, there's been a lot of focus on Dorries. No doubt due to the lack of political news over the summer recess. It does get a bit quiet, you may have noticed. A petition on 38 degrees for Nadine Dorries to either do her job or actually stand down has reached 80,000 signatures. Henry Riley of LBC has been going around her constituency of Mid-Bedfordshire with wanted posters asking, has anyone seen Nadine Dorries? As Riley himself said, the last time Dorries spoke in Parliament, Queen Elizabeth was our monarch and Boris Johnson was our Prime Minister. Chris Bryant, the chair of the Standards Committee, suggested that an ancient parliamentary rule could be invoked in order to compel Dorries to either attend or face a suspension of sufficient length to face a recall petition, which would get rid of her. It would take several months, but it would then get rid of her. In reality, of course, there is no need for any existing rule, ancient or otherwise, if a majority of MPs decides that Dorries's behaviour is causing reputational damage to Parliament. They're completely within their rights to make up a new rule to deal with it. But even though the lingering Nadine Dorries, as a colleague of hers described her, is a problem for the Conservatives, I'm not necessarily sure that Conservative MPs would want to vote for action like this. Certainly, if I were a Conservative MP, I'd be a little bit worried about the potential for creating further fractures within the already unstable parliamentary party. Nadine Dorries, of course, is no stranger to Standards Committee investigations, but at the same time, most MPs who've been in Parliament for long enough face one in the end for something. Often it's for a minor and inadvertent breach and nothing really comes of it because it was just one of those things. Interestingly, the Standards Committee are currently carrying out a review into the bodies and processes which regulate the behaviour of MPs. So maybe when that report is published, it could be a good opportunity for the next Labour government to do something with it. But another campaign group's been in the news, Unlock Democracy. They're calling for Dorries to be investigated by the Standards Committee as a result of polling which would appear to suggest a majority of the public believe that her antics are causing significant damage to Parliament's reputation. And I can certainly believe that many of her own constituents would be deeply upset about the lack of representation. Maybe there should have been a petition carried out more locally. You know, when I did a bit of canvassing ahead of the Selby by-election, I talked to a few people they're people who are quite happy to vote Conservative. They've voted Conservative in the past. They'll probably do so in the future. But they were saying how appalled they were at Nigel Adams. Now, this is the former MP there whose resignation triggered the by-election. What they were annoyed at is that in the middle of a cost of living crisis, he was abandoning them for no other reason than just to have a sulk about not getting into the House of Lords. They were appalled. But Adams at least resigned immediately and Selby now have an MP. How much more annoyed must the voters in Mid-Bedfordshire be? Dorries has abandoned them, and she abandoned them long before her strop. It's not just that she isn't attending Parliament now. She wasn't attending Parliament for almost a year before she announced her resignation, and she wasn't even attending to local constituency matters. She hasn't held a surgery there for years. But at this point, I do feel I should add one little thought into the mix here. Now, I was discussing this yesterday with some people. So there is no doubt that Nadine Dorries deserves this attention on the fact she isn't doing her job, either in Parliament or her constituency. She is a bad faith actor towards those who elected her. But the more focus I see on this, the more I wonder if there aren't a few little double standards at play here. Dorries may have been more in your face about her dereliction of duty than others, but she's not the only work-shy MP. Former Attorney General Geoffrey Cox famously is only ever seen in his constituency during general election campaigns. That's what the locals say. Oh, we only ever see him when he wants our vote. The rest of the time, he's not doing anything. As for his parliamentary attendance, he turns up now and then, but the best way to judge their attendance is when they speak. A quick look on Hansard shows that Cox hardly ever says anything in Parliament, which is the only real measure of attendance, which is proof. On the 5-year timeline, there is a gap of 20 months where he didn't speak at all. Now, that is a much longer gap than exists so far for Nadine Dorries. Because as both a backbencher as well as obviously a cabinet minister, her timeline is much more, regular. So as much as I think Dorries deserves this focus, I mean, not doing anything for a year is outrageous. No surgeries, no speaking in Parliament. That's the job of an MP. I do feel a little bit wary of the fact that Geoffrey Cox actually was worse. There was a bit of brief media attention on him at one point, I remember, but that was it. His record of both conducting surgeries and speaking in Parliament is worse than Nadine Dorries's. So I'm thinking to myself, so let's say she does face an investigation. It's not clear she will, just because someone's asking for it doesn't mean it's going to happen. But if she did, why wouldn't Cox have? Is it really just because of the very public way in which Dorries has behaved? Because the focus is on the fact that it's damaging Parliament's reputation. Is the argument that, well, Geoffrey Cox, because he didn't make a song and dance about it, a lot of people knew about it, so it wasn't damaging to Parliament's reputation? In which case, what you're saying is, so what would Dorries then be investigated for? Drawing attention to her dereliction rather than the dereliction itself. And I am always conscious of the fact that in politics, women are judged way harsher than men. And even when the woman in question is fully deserving of the harsh spotlight in this case, the misogyny arguably is that the bloke is getting away with basically the same behaviour, isn't he? For example, the same people who defended the myriad, regular, daily lockdown busting parties that Boris Johnson held while he was supposed to be working on the biggest emergency of my lifetime. Those same people who will go, oh, it's only cake, wasn't it? Didn't even eat the cake. They will happily attack Angela Rayner for having a legal party whilst on holiday. So rather than making a fuss over one wayward MP, I'll tell you what I would like to see. Not an investigation into Nadine Dorries. I would like this investigation into, the bodies that have oversight over MPs' behaviour to decide that what's really wanted is a robust code of conduct with minimum service requirements. Nothing too rigid. There are some MPs who need to spend more time in their constituencies. There are some MPs who need to spend more time in Westminster. But maybe insist that there should be a minimum number of days, illness allowing, minimum number of days where they are engaged in something verifiably the work of an MP. It could be in the constituency. It could be a surgery putting on that day. It could be an official visit. You could be visiting a school or a business, as long as it's official. Or in Westminster, verified attendance from speaking. One of those three things, just every, there needs to be a minimum number of days in the year when you're doing those things. I wouldn't count voting, because for voting, first of all, you can get proxy votes. But secondly, you could easily nip in for half an hour to do that. If you know roughly when the division's going to be, you just nip it. Sometimes it's in the evening. You can be spending the day putting your feet up. You can just nip in, go through the door that your whip tells you to, and then bugger off again. So no, what I would like to see is some sort of, minimum expectation of an MP that is flexible enough for that MP to go, well, I need to spend most of my time in my constituency, or, I'm a minister, say, so I'm going to have to spend quite a lot of time in Westminster, whatever it is. That way you don't pick on one MP for not doing their job, but largely leave another alone for the same offence. Either attendance is expected or it is not. If it is, should be for everyone. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.